Yes. L4.
Exhibit 4 was a transfer in February of 2002 from Southpointe Golf Club, Inc. to a resident, Caroline Milwaukee. I believe she's here. I apologize for mispronouncing. This particular conveyance was for a fractional acreage, very small piece, for construction of a structure that was on residential property on the golf course, just adjacent to the golf course.
Was that a residential structure?
It was probably an ancillary structure, a wall, or utility. Well, it wouldn't be utility connection. We believe it was a little retaining wall or landscape garden that was close to the golf course. So Wedgwood overhangs the golf course. The golf course has always been accommodating anything that would happen along that edge.
Was it ancillary to a residential use?
Yes. Yes. And then that takes us to 6, Exhibit 5. This was a transfer from Southpointe Golf Club to Washington County Authority September 5th of 2006, and this was 3 acres that was conveyed to the Washington County Authority for purposes of stormwater management for all of Southpointe 2, and that is the exhibit that is in the glasses. I think that's the upper left.
The photograph.
The photograph in the upper left of the exhibit. And then that takes us to Exhibit 6, which is, again, a conveyance from Southpointe Golf Club Inc. to Wood and Irons LP. This was an Ironwood residential conveyance, again, for an ancillary residential structure on golf course property. And then finally, Exhibit C, no, that's it.
L7.
7 was the one that was actually conveyed to the golf course.
So my point here is, Mr. Fisher, that in addition to transfers of property for different uses than outdoor recreational use, as you talked about from Exhibit K, there have also been transfers of pieces of property to accommodate residences adjoining properties development of their residential uses and property coming back to the golf course. Transfers back and forth.
Yes, that's correct.
This has happened historically all the time.
Yes.
Next exhibit I'm going to ask you to look at is marked Exhibit N. You might want to come over here, Mark. Exhibit N is a copy of the text of the proposed ordinance as marked with an arrow line showing the permitted changes in use for any of the permitted uses within the SD zoning district. Item A, outdoor recreation facilities, community or private membership. That's Southpointe Golf Club, correct?
Yeah, these are under the SD residential land uses,
Yes.
right? Yes.
And that's where the golf course is.
That's
under
right.
that.
The golf course is in it, yes.
So all of those uses under that residential, this proposed ordinance says that they can ask for a change in use that is less restrictive, meaning they could go down in use down this list. You agree with that?
Yes.
But in asking to change to something that this board has called more restrictive, you have to go to something that is above your current use, correct?
Correct.
What is there above the designation for the golf club's current use?
There isn't. There's no place to go.
So this proposed ordinance would attempt to, in perpetuity, forever, make the golf club be used for community or private membership or outdoor recreational facilities, would it not?
Correct, yes.
By the way, the proposed ordinance talks about approval by adjoining landowners of 51% for undeveloped tracts. Can you tell me how many undeveloped tracts there are in Southpointe 1?
In Southpointe 1, there is one, it's a conservation tract, parcel 14, which is owned by Southpointe Property Owners Association.
So it's owned by a communal property association?
Yes.
And it's dedicated to their use?
Yes.
Every other lot has been developed in Southpointe 1?
That's correct.
What about in Southpointe 2?
Well, there are 3 parcels, 2 that have not been developed and 1 that's in the process of being developed.
I don't have any questions for Mike Swisher. Next witness I call is John Trant, Jr. Mr. Trant is an attorney and certified land planner by the American Institute of Certified Planners. His CV is attached to his report, which I'm offering. The report in his testimony is that of an expert witness regarding the legality and good planning of this proposed ordinance. John, would you just give your name for the record and some of your background, professional background as it relates to land development?
Sure. My name is John Trant, Jr. I am a landscape architect, community planner, and attorney. I have undergraduate degrees in landscape architecture and geography from Penn State University and a law degree from Duke University. I've been practicing in the area of land use planning for the last 15 years in Pennsylvania specifically, and have intimate knowledge of the municipality's planning code.
Mr. Trant, were you asked, I'll get there. Have you been qualified to testify as an expert in legal proceedings previously
I have.
on land development?
I have.
Mr. Trant, were you asked by my firm to prepare an expert report regarding the proposed adoption of this new amendment?
Yes, I was.
And Exhibit M in front of you, is that a copy of your report?
That's correct.
I'd like you to go through, you talked about your credentials. I'd like you to tell the board generally familiarity with the site and the applicable documents and due diligence you undertook in preparing this report.
Sure, familiar with the site through a site visit that was conducted on July 8th, looking at the golf course property and surrounding properties. Additionally, I reviewed several of the documents that were already referenced here tonight, and that would include the Cecil Township Unified Development Ordinance, the former Section 913 of that ordinance, Ordinance 1-2016, which amends Section 913 of the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, the proposed ordinance under consideration tonight, amending Section 913 of the UDO, an appeal from the enactment of zoning ordinance number 2016-1 by Southpointe Golf Club, transcripts of the hearings for the prior amendment to Section 913, the Southpointe tax parcel map that's been previously referenced as an exhibit, and the Township of Cecil comprehensive plan dated 1998.
And in your review, tell me what your review led you to conclude regarding Southpointe Golf Course, the history of the SD Development Zoning District.
Sure, the Southpointe Golf Course is part of the overall Southpointe development. As you know, the Special Development District was created to facilitate the development of Southpointe, part of which was the golf course. The purpose of that district was to facilitate development in a manner that was flexible and market sensitive. In particular, there is a statement of intent in the SD district that specifically says the intent was to allow flexibility in design, accommodate a variety of uses, and provide a procedure which can respond to changes in market conditions.
On page 2 of your report, you talk about the SD district's statement of intent. Could you just hit some of the highlights, what your review revealed to you?
Yeah, I think I might have been a step ahead of you there. I just did a little bit of that, but some more detail. There's the Special Development District, as I said, was created as part of the Township's Unified Development Ordinance to facilitate development of Southpointe, to allow for flexibility in design, recognizing it was a large land development in the community, to promote regional economic development, and to accommodate a variety of uses, industrial, commercial, and residential. Also to respond to changes in market conditions such that the flexibility in the land uses would allow for the available market to be captured so that development could occur according to plans for the properties in that zoning district.
Going to page 3 of your report, discuss please what the permitted land uses are in this SD district.
There are a variety of permitted land uses in the SD district. There are 58 permitted uses. As I mentioned previously, they are categorized into industrial uses, commercial uses, and residential uses. And those uses are all permitted in the SD zoning district as a use by right, a conditional use, or a special exception. Permitted uses are permitted in the zoning district if they're listed as such, as authorized or permitted in that zoning district, and then they can therefore be categorized as uses by right, special exceptions, or conditional uses that come with additional requirements and restrictions on that particular use.
Would you comment about the proposed changes in use requirements both for vacant land, which I heard Mr. Fisher say there are only 4 parcels in the entire Southpointe area, and one of them is pending development, and then also the differences regarding the proposed changes in use relative to development.
This ordinance amendment changes the available uses for the property, certain properties, in a way that restricts the availability of several of the uses. The exhibit that was previously mentioned, the large blow-up of a section of the proposed ordinance amendment, lists, for example, all of the residential uses that are permitted. And if you think of it as a spectrum, this proposed amendment creates a spectrum from least restrictive to most restrictive. It goes from the industrial uses as the least restrictive to the commercial uses to the residential uses, which are the most restrictive. If you take that spectrum from left to right and turn it upside down or turn it up and down, it's a ladder. And so at the bottom of the ladder, you've got the industrial uses. The middle of the ladder, you've got the commercial uses. At the top of the ladder, you have the residential uses. That top rung is what is identified in the large exhibit there.
And that's also on page 5.
Also on page 5 of our
reference that. Yes.
And that top rung of residential uses is further broken down by specifically listing specific uses in the residential use category and ranking them in a sense in order of least restrictive to most restrictive being at the top of the list, A, community or private membership outdoor recreation facilities. And the way this ladder works is it's one way. You can only go up the ladder. So the most restrictive use at the top is the top rung, and you can only go up, so there is no additional uses that are available to property that is being used as community or private membership outdoor recreation facilities.
And you heard Mr. Fisher's testimony about that. Would you agree with what he said renders it perpetual to that use?
Yes, I just want to clarify because I think he might have said that there was an opportunity to go down the list. That opportunity is only afforded with the approval of adjacent property owners at 100% or 51%, depending on whether the property is vacant or developed.
I think you mean Mr. Swisher's testimony, correct?
Did I say?
Yeah, he's referring to as Mr. Fisher.
I'm sorry.
Just to clarify for the record.
No offense taken. But thank you.
Anyway, would you repeat that, John?
The only way, this ladder only goes up. The bottom bucket is the industrial uses, the middle bucket is the commercial uses, and the top is the residential. The order of priority is least restrictive all the way up to most restrictive. The community or private membership outdoor recreation facilities land use is the top rung of that ladder. And you cannot go down the ladder with respect to requesting approval for a use below that top rung without, except that, you can ask for approval from adjacent property owners, and the percentage approval requirement depends on whether you are proposing this use on a vacant piece of property or developed piece of property.